Welcome to the new Flight Simulator Update movie. In this movie, we're gonna look at Sim Update number 13, which has been released earlier today. It will bump up your Flight Simulator version to version 1.34.16.0. Right, that's the latest version, which you can now get. One of the things which they are always recommending is to move the content out of the community folder if you're experiencing issues. I was part of the beta testing and I didn't see too many issues, to be honest. Initially, there were some stability issues, but hey, they are now fixed, so that looks good. What always is a good idea is to make sure that your community packages are updated to the latest version, because in some cases there's a specific fix. In this case, for the latest sim update. So if we go to the list of general bug fixes, we can see a lot of interesting stuff. Of course, we can always see the memory and frames per second optimizations, as well as the several crashes have been fixed across the title. I would say those two are mostly part of the release notes every time that sim update is being released. The second one is an interesting one, and that's the issue which was introduced by AAU number 2, right? That's the aircraft and avionics update number 2. And that was specifically when you moved your, I would say, joystick and then a specific part of the joystick, the head, then you would see a white dot. And that white dot would move everywhere, right? That was simply to, would say, make it easy to recognize where the cursor is. However, what the, I would say, idea behind that issue was to make it more accessible, right? So if you had issues with finding, okay, hey, where's my cursor? Then you could switch on that option. So they now, let's say, fixed it by adjusting the functionality because not everybody was happy with that functionality. So if you go to options, general options, and then go to accessibility, you will find a few things. First of all, you will see the show the white dot cursor in free look, right? Which is default on. So if you're in free look, and if you look around, you will see that white dot until you stop, and then it will, I would say, show and say hide that white dot again. So if you don't want it, then make sure that you switch that option off. Then the second one is allow the 2D cursor on all peripherals. That one's by default off, but you can switch it on, and especially very useful if you're using a gamepad because then you can see, okay, hey, which I would say navigation system or I would say button is now being selected because that can be challenging when playing Flight Simulator with a gamepad. So with that, let's say mentioned right, let's move on into the rest of the options, or the rest of the fix, I should say. The second fix has to do with the active pause, right, where you can actively pause and Flight Simulator, for example, to make a nice screenshot. That's now the aircraft velocity and angular velocity are also frozen, which was not the case. And there was a fix specifically for the logbook, where after reaching the logbook reaches a size of 16 megabytes, it would stop logging any, I would say, new flights. And that's likely due to the fact that a lot of people are now hitting that limitation and it was never tested. So that's good. Then there was an issue fixed when where uninstalled standard content would automatically be reinstalled. Not so nice because normally what you would do is you remove standard content to free up this space. In this case, it would be automatically reinstalled, but that's now fixed. And the dark line that appears on the horizon in some situations is now less visible. Last one, there are a lot of localization bugs, and you will see that later in the release notes also. Then there's the marketplace. There's a fix which were bug preventing content bought inside the marketplace from appearing in the content manager. Right, so if you bought something, then it wouldn't appear in the content manager, which they looked weird, but it's now fixed. In the menu, you can now also search for the airports if they've got special characters. That wasn't possible, but now that's being fixed in this update, as well as the fixed main menu image for the Top Gun Maverick downloadable content, which was extending beyond the title boundaries. It was really looking weird, but they now fixed it. For the accessibility part, there is some new additions. So first of all, the screen reader will now correctly narrate the highlight option within the pop-up menu dialogues, such as OK, cancel, save, etc. And the D-pad and keypad navigation within the UI menu will no longer jump unexpectedly to the social pane that happened. If you played it with a D-pad or with a keyboard, then it would sometimes, I would say, go from one menu to the other one, and that was now fixed. Then the logbook can now be navigated also using either the D-pad or your keyboard. So you're not longer, I would say, depending on the mouse or on your joystick. And there's the updated tooltip to better explain how to adjust the slider or cyclic options using the gamepad or keyboard. Going to the install phase, there was an issue where it would delete the content on the Xbox when you deleted it on the, well, where you deleted it on the Xbox, it would delete it on the PC also. So if you're playing on both machines and you will delete something on the Xbox, for example, a world update to free up the disk space on the Xbox, then it would delete the same world update also on the PC. That's good. It's now fixed. Two fixes for the online version. There's a bug where the user could not join a group after accepting an invitation, as well as a bug where lights SIM4 were not properly replicated. So good to see that they also fixed that. Then in navigation and traffic, they fixed a bug where the airplanes didn't show slow down, enough to turn while taxiing. That was more for the aircrafts, I would say, which were, I would say, yeah, not the static aircraft, but really the dynamic aircraft, right? So really the ones which are making it more real life. And there's a fixed bug where the airplanes forming a go around would go in circles forever. I must say that the go arounds in Flight Simulator sometimes happens on a very regular base. I'm really hoping that it doesn't happen on a regular base in real world life. Then there are tons of updates for the glass cockpit, meaning the Garmin G3000 and G5000, as well as the G1000 NXI. And this last one also, the Garmin GNS 430W and 530W. I won't go to all of them because that simply is too long and that would make this video, I would say, more than an hour. So overall, what they did is they updated several things. So they manipulated the say mainly the displays. For example, the wind vectors, which is now being displayed correctly, as well as the radar page. Weather radar page has now some more options, as well as several bug fixes. For example, where they turn the autopilot vor lock intercept behavior to reduce overshoot in most scenarios. The ADF frequency, which was not working correctly. So those are the fixes mainly for the G3000 and G5000. Now, if you go to the G1000 NXI, you see, I would say, common pattern in it because most of the fixes which were in for the G3000 and G5000 are also part for the G1000 NXI. So most of them, there are some ones which are not specifically for the G1000 NXI being implemented, which are for the G3000 and G5000 and vice versa, but there's not a lot of difference in there. The the Garmin GNS 430W and 530W have a specific fix. The arrow velocity L39 skip quick, right? That's a very specific fix for this aircraft. Was unable to enter the values by double clicking on the GNS. So that's now fixed, as well as the VFR map, where an issue was fixed, an issue where the VFR map would not show the heliports, which are added a few updates back, right? Where, let's say, you previously could not see where you can find these heliports, where you can land with your helicopter. That's now being fixed, and you can now also see it easily on your VFR map. Then going to the aircraft list, and this list is also pretty long, so I will pick out some of the updates because I went to it, and there are some really nice ones, but also ones which might be less important. First of all, there's to fix the camera freeze with the joystick top hat, right, where the camera would simply freeze and you couldn't move anymore. That's now being fixed. For the A310, there are a lot of localization fixes for multiple languages, as well as some livery fixes and the crash to desktop experience by some users. That one has also now been fixed. Besides that, there are some nice, I would say, fine-tuning things like okay, the rear nav lights being too bright, as well as the GWS sounds being now being too quiet. Right, so that's good. Then for the Boeing 787-10 and 747-8i, both aircraft received massive updates the last few times. And with new functionality, there will be new issues. And that's where you will see that I would say both aircrafts have a lot of new things, but also fixes. So first of all, I would say the most interesting one, and I'm loving it, is the SimBrief support, which is now being there, as well as there's a new functionality in the FMC where you can say add route request functionality backed by SymBrief, right? So you can see multiple things which are, let's say, either implemented by manually, but all of it is depending on the SymBrief integration. So that's cool. So then the weight and balance page also received some new settings for fuel and payload management, as well as the VNAV added step support for step climbs. So if you need to climb in steps, that's also now supported. Uh, Other than that, a lot of CDU fixes. That's being, I would say, caused by the fact that they implement a lot of CDU things or CDU items in the previous updates. But you can still see there are also some things which are really new, right? They added the max ankle speed field for the climbing page. They added the cruise climb related functionality to perf inlet cruise, proc, and lags. So also new things in here. Besides that, they manipulated the checklist, right? So they kind of made it a little bit more complete. So that's good. And then we're scrolling down after going to the systems quickly. The few systems are now being, I would say, new, have received some new functionality, both for the 747 and 787. Then we're coming to the fix list, right? I already mentioned to you, hey, there are a lot of things which they fixed or implemented. Some of them is a little bit weird because I would expect this one, for example, to be in a fix in the bug fixes. But here are all the bug fixes. And that's what you see when you implement new stuff. You will create new issues. That's what I mentioned already, right? Here you can see a lot of fixes for both the autopilot. The CDU received most fixes, but that makes sense because most changes were introduced in that one. The ICAS received one, a few. Flight model received an update, as well as the FMC, which also received a lot of updates last time. In addition to that, the VNAV, also some nice fixes. The autopilot, the FMC for the 747, and there are also some very specific ones for the 787. So you can see that they're listening to the feedback and they have worked really, really hard to implement a lot of fixes, but still add a lot of new functionalities. Likely the new or the next sim update, I should say, will still receive a lot of fixes because these systems which they added or I would say optimized are really complex systems, right? But really cool to see. Then coming to the, I would say, shorter list, right? The Cessna 208B Caravan, they fixed the radio panel. As the Cessna Citation CD4, they fixed the passenger cabin lights not working. Those are the smaller fixes. Then we're coming to the CG4 and the Citation Longitude. Those have, I would say, several fixes. One of them is for the CD4 that received also the SymBrief integration. And with that, they also manipulated the FMC a bit, so they add some new stuff, as well as the CG for the ground power can now be toggled on or off using the user settings menu, as well as the passenger cabin lights can be, I would say, also switched on and off. Some small fixes where the red AP disconnect unsaturation would flicker. They adjusted the calculation of the average speed on the flight log page. So nice fixes for that aircraft also. The longitude, all mainly fixes, right? There's not a lot of new functionality in here, but mainly fixes to the autopilot, but also to the heading knob while the heading mode was activated, right? Heading knob while the heading mode was activated. They, I would say, fixed that piece. So few fixes for that aircraft. Continuing with the C Curtis GN4 Jenny, also only fixes, nothing new for this aircraft. Mainly due to mainly in the views and the, I would say, how the aircraft looks like, but also a spawn issue with a default or custom amount of view. And the EFB, that's what we see, I would say, on other aircrafts also they fixed that, and a localization issue. The TBM 930, the autopilot, is now, when in selected mode, the airport reference is now limited to between 80 knots and 265 knots, or the max, Mac, I would say, alternates. The weather radar will now fill if power is removed on bus number 2, and also the heading knob and the heading mode, like the same one as we saw earlier with the citation longitude, is also being added to this aircraft. Then the Diamond DV20, they fixed unable to enter the values by clicking on the GNS. So a little bit the same as the fix we saw earlier. And the DG Fluxual DG1000E, they fixed the ping textures on some instruments, which we've seen earlier with some other things within Flight Simulator. The DC3 also some fixes, including the co-pilot yoke is tilted and the cockpit model nose rivets, UV map stretched, bad textures, the beacon switch not labeled, all kind of minor fixes which make it, I would say, better. The Grumman G21 Goose also only fixes for this one. Some livery names which were incorrectly labeled, some localization issues, or mostly localization issues. The EFB screen flickering, the manual fuel pump has no sound. All kind of nice. Fix also for that one. Then the H4 Hercules Spruce Goose, all 8 engines are now supported, so that's cool. So you can now control each engine individually. That's how I read it. And they added some new functionality. For example, the undercarriage in the hangar mode, the tugboat, the water fiction, the throttle transfer from pilot to engineer, as well as the throttle friction. Last one is the hangar description and tooltips in Turkish and Korean. And there was, I would say, some fixes over here where they fixed some art issues in the cockpit itself. Then the Robin Captain, unable to enter the values by double clicking on the GNS screen. That one we saw it earlier. The Ryan NIP Spirit of St. Louis, also the description and tooltips for Turkish and Korean, and the same is applicable to the Wright Flyer. Coming to the world, they have updated some airports and some poise. For example, the Burj Khalifa poi collision, which could happen, as well as the visual issues on water in photogrammetry cities on the Xbox. So only on the Xbox, not on the PC. A small fix for a specific air, Deauville Island, which is New Zealand. Then we're coming to an interesting part, which we didn't see a lot with sim updates, and that's really the updates for the aircraft, but also for the individual world updates. So first of all, some larger airports, right? John F. Kennedy, Dallas Fort Worth Airport, Donegal Airport, Seattle Tacoma Airport, all kind of adding missing buildings or optimizing the aircraft or optimizing the airport to make it more realistic. Then going to the world updates. Well, I think every world update is there except world update number 7. But the rest is all there. And you can see that depending on how old between the world update is, I would say less issues have been fixed. There are 2 exceptions, which is world update number 4 and world update number 8, which received tons of, I would say, updates, right? These are the 2 world updates, I'd say older world updates, which received a lot of fixes. The last one, right, Central Eastern Europe and Oceania and Antarctica, they also received some updates, both for the aircraft, but also for the scenery itself. So that's also good to see. Then the 40th anniversary update, also known as Sim Update number 11. The Hong Kong Kai Tak Airport received an update to fix an open hangar that the user cannot taxi inside. And the Game of the Year edition, they fixed Leipzig Halle Airport, 2 fixes, the jetways, and the missing all arrivals departures. Then some new peripherals which are supported. First of all, the Honeycomb Alpha Flight Controls Pro and the PC and Xbox, as well as the Yeoman Arrow on the PC version. There are some known issues, so keep that in mind. And there is a new preset, the General Aviation preset for the Thrustmaster Airport Quadrant. If you're using other peripherals, there's also some fix for you. Especially this one might be interested if you're playing it on the Xbox. There's the fixed yoke behavior after suspend the MSFS on the Xbox. Other than that, I would say there are some fixes, but they are more for developers. SimConnect and SimForce are always interesting because you could use, I would say, third-party tools to control Flight Simulator. There are some fixes over there, as well as the Sim4 Watcher, which has received an update. So I would say I'm pretty impressed. It's a very, very, very long list. You can see both fixes for the sim itself, for the aircraft, cockpits, but also for the, I would say, individual, I would say, world updates, so which means scenery, right? So pretty cool to see. So in this video, we went to, let's say, most of the updates, right? Some of them a little bit quicker. If you already want to see the SimBrief integration live, then watch my channel because there are multiple videos which I recorded during the beta phase where I already, let's say, showcased the functionality. So you can have a look at it. If you want to know what's next, then keep an eye on my channel because I will post a new video about what will come very soon for Flight Simulator 2020. Here ends this video. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.